Ladies and gents, I have been in the lab. I've been working so hard on my new course, Weapons of War, and teaching myself a ton of stuff about this magical game in the process. But now I'm taking a break because I have a special guest, someone that you may have seen if you saw Hand of the Week, and that guest is 200 Online Pro and High Stakes Live Pro, Hugh. Welcome to the channel. Let's go over some more of your hands, man. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. What about yourself, bro?
Doing well. We obviously played a hand together this morning. This has been a whirlwind romance. You said, hey, let's talk about the hand. We did. Now we're doing another video. I was really impressed actually with your level in the first video. And yeah, I think you articulated yourself really well too. So you've earned yourself a 30-minute spot on a full-length Carrot Corner video where we go over some of your key hands.
Happy days. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so what is your story? How have you become a winning 200 cash online player and also a live player that's making a lot of money playing high stakes live games? How have you done this in only 2 years? Because a lot of people watching this are kind of perplexed by this title. They're wondering if it's a scam, if it's even possible. Is this real? How have you done it?
No, it is all very, very real. I had a bit of a different upbringing. I played a lot of card games when I was younger, not obviously gambling related. They were more Hearthstone, if you might have heard of that one,
Yep.
and Magic the Gathering. Used to play very, very high levels for both of those. And I just loved card games, video games, all that kind of stuff. And I kind of took a bit of a hiatus from that just because I wasn't enjoying it too much. And it happened to be, we have a holiday here in Australia called Australia Day, very, very fitting for the country.
Hmm.
And a whole bunch of my boys were sitting around. They're like, let's play a bit of poker. And I'd heard of poker, but I'd never played it. And I was kind of scared. I was very like, oh, gambling, blah, blah, blah. We had a friend there who he used to be, back then at least, very good at poker. He was like, nah, bro, it's a lot of strategy. Just play. It's $5. It'll be a bit of fun. And I ended up coming second, I think. And I just loved the strategy behind it. And the next day, signed up on Ignition and was grinding the $1 sit and goes and did that for a very, very long time, playing the pub leagues. And yeah, eventually one day I ran into your YouTube videos, found the Carrot Poker School, started watching those, and made an online account for GG Poker. Really was grinding, playing casino, a couple of home games. Just spent ages in the lab, a lot of study. Obviously, a lot of downswings, a lot of upswings, good moments, bad moments. But I always found myself the next day, I'd wake up and just be like, damn, I love playing cards. I love strategy. I just want to keep playing. I don't really care about the money. And here we are now. Thankfully, it's worked out. I know there's a lot of people where it doesn't work out too well, but you know, if you do stick to it and you really, really do have that heart and you really want to put in the effort, I'm sure everyone can get there. I mean, if I managed to do it in 2 years, I'm sure you guys can too.
Yeah, I think the background in other strategy games has probably really helped. I used to play a lot of Hearthstone. I made Legend once, and then I don't think I played much after that. It was kind of like, right, that's done now. I don't need to keep grinding the little numbers and the crystal. But yeah, I think that's another really good point, is that sometimes in life, the things that we really try to get and like, destroy ourselves trying to get, we don't get them. And when we actually focus on the objective and we just like get really curious about the game, the results come, right? So it sounds like that you just loved the game, you were super passionate, and because you were able to actually put the mechanics of the game and the sort of the beauty of it, the objective beauty of it before what was happening in your daily grind, you were able to like attract good things by virtue of not trying too hard to get them. I think that's a really cool pattern in poker and in life as well. Right, so you brought a few hands. The first one you've described as like a really obscene check behind, which is always a cool thing to talk about. Let's get into it. Let's
Yeah.
find out what's happening here with this Ace of Diamonds, King of Spades.
Cool. So yeah, three bet on the button versus a good old hijack open. It is a 2.5 hijack open. I will just default to 7.5 big blinds regardless of position for my three bet. Doesn't really matter pre-flop sizing, honestly, as long as you're not being completely crazy with it. Really doesn't matter too much as long as you're getting the money in with good hands and obviously doing it with some bluffs as well. Folds around and he goes back for the call.
Cool. Any information on the player? Reg, recreational, any player type?
I tagged him as a pink, which for me is someone who I'm thinking is a little bit on the like worser side, maybe a bit more wrecky,
Mhm.
especially with that 2.5 open. I usually don't like 2.5 opening from those early positions,
Yep.
but it was probably the first or second day I was playing with him, so nothing really major.
Yeah, I think this is known as a recreational on probation by Benabadby if you watch his channel.
Very much so.
All
But
right.
yeah, did a B33. I actually don't like my sizing on the flop. Jack 7-7, super, super dry, obviously. I personally just prefer sizing up to a B50. I I know we talked about in the other episode not really using that RNG, but I kind of default to RNG sometimes. In this mood, I was on the RNG mood. Rolled super low, so I just went for a B33. I do think this is one of those boards, though, you do need to be pure betting. Whether it is a B50, a B33, just do whatever's comfortable. As long as you are putting some money in here, you just have such a wild range advantage. And the board is so good for you, might as well chuck a bit of extra money in there and get a lot of folds. A lot of good stuff can happen.
Yeah, I remember Luke Johnson, like when we used to talk a lot about poker, Clanty, he's like a high stakes kind of reg, and he quizzed me. He was like, what's the best board for button? Button versus hijack 3-bet pot. It's the best board. And I was like, jack, deuce, deuce, jack, 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 deuce, deuce, deuce. It's got to be something with jacks and deuces in it, right? It was like something like that. So yeah, these
Jack
are
is very, very good because we have all of our ace jacks, king jacks, all of that good stuff. Very, very hard for them to have the offsuit combos, which we do have.
for sure. Yeah, love the jack in a 3-bet pot. Go nuts when I see a jack. Lose my mind. Start blasting off. Okay, so we go for the small bet here. Can't be a mistake, but I agree with pure betting flop. The turn is the Queen of Hearts. How are we thinking about this card? How are we analysing the spot?
Yeah, Queen of Hearts. Interesting. Obviously, first thing to note is we do not have any hearts in hand. And the second thing that we should really be taking aware of, and I know blockers, especially at lower stakes, they matter, but not to the degree that some people really work it up to be. I especially struggled with blockers as a theory as a whole, climbing through the ranks. I used to focus so much on blockers and whether I had good blockers, bad blockers, very, very intricate, specific details, where a lot of the time they're not even thinking about that. This is one of those hands, though, where the blockers really do come into play, especially on this river decision. But we are blocking those backdoors that float. Anyway, regardless, it's once again a pretty good turn. It's never really wrong in a 3-bet pot to be barreling with a gut shot and 2 overs, I think, ever. I was chatting, in fact, with Alex Pinero, and he was the
Oh,
one that
nice.
taught me that as well. Yeah, but yeah, it's never really wrong to just be barreling. Once again, with my sizing, I think I did size a little too small. I did use that RNG once again, and it rolled very, very low, which for me is a smaller sizing. I think checking here as well would be pretty decent, but once again, it's never wrong to be betting. I ended up rolling that half pot, and if you were to bet, I'd probably, looking back at it, go to a 75, but I don't hate the half pot.
Yeah, I think it's one of these spots where your range probably just wants to build around like a B60 or a B75 or something like that, but half pot's at least big enough that it's achieving the main aim. You are in position, which takes away a lot of the needs and wants to block bet. There's a lot of like small betting used on certain turn cards out of position in 3-bet pots, as you will know. In position on a card like this, I think we're going a bit more thicker value and bluffs, and while it is a really good card for range, there's probably still some checking range right on this card.
Yeah, like I said, I do mix in checks with this hand as well. Pretty much most of my ace kings I do mix in checks with. I just happened to roll low this time, but not low enough for a check, so
Yep.
rolled on that B50. I think going forward, especially with my game, I try to split my range so much and make so many complicated nodes, ends up confusing myself. I think just basic heuristic, make it one sizing until the river, B75 or B60, whatever your heart desires. Go big or go home, make it one
Yeah.
size.
I'm building this Weapons of Warhorse at the moment, and what I've decided is that there are some spots where I really, really like having more than one sizing, where somewhat counterintuitively, I think it even makes more sense. It's easier and it's more intuitive to play. Like, it sounds counterintuitive, but it is more intuitive to play two sizes in some spots where you just have a very clear segregation between two very different classes of value hand with different equities. But here, yeah, we don't really need to do that, I don't think, in this spot. I'm curious, by the way, how did you get talking to Alex? He's a good friend of mine, a player I respect a lot, and
Yeah.
obviously one of our coaches at Carrot Corner.
No, well, I ended up after watching, I reckon, the very first video you made with him, and I saw specifically the A6 of Diamond 10, where he ended up
Yeah,
hero calling ace high on the river. I was like, damn, this guy's sick. So I messaged him on Discord, and we ended up chatting a bit.
lovely. Yeah, nice guy. Okay,
Carrot
so
Corner, commuting, creating communities.
yeah, I do like to think that we attract the serious academic kind of sicko types. And yeah, a lot of the people that join our communities are very, like, I think they're called like type A personalities, like very driven, very sort of serious, very hardworking, all of that. That's definitely the ethos that we try and project. So good stuff. All right, so we go for the bet this time. I do actually think that this smaller sizing is devastatingly effective against the humans of the GG pool. I think this is a very overfolded node, a difficult one to meet the defense frequency, and it should be overfolded a bit compared to the mathematical defense frequency, right? The MDF. So solver's going to overfold MDF here, and then a human is probably going to overfold relative to solver. So we have these like 3 layers of fold equity. The math, which is a bit arbitrary, the theory, which is based on range asymmetry as well, and like who's doing better. You have to fold more of your range when you're not doing as well, and then like the true fold equity. Of course, the true EV fold equity. Good old editor putting that drum roll
that's
in there.
it. Add it in.
All right, so the 10 of spades, and you described this hand,
Pink.
Hugh, as
Happy days.
happy days, but you described this as a disgusting check back. Surely,
Yeah.
surely, guys, he's not going to check back here. Editor, countdown from 3. Check back the river. Okay, give me a second to process this, because I want to make sure that I've thought about it fairly before I get you to explain it. All right, I've done some thinking, as you guys just saw, and I think what's driving you in this spot is 2 things, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong about this. We've not talked about this hand before, disclaimer. First thing, this is maximum voltage. Like when there's a queen, a jack, and a 10 out there, while that gives us the nut straight and we like those cards, this is kind of the most likely hands to reach the river. Like 9s, 8s, 7s, that's quads, 6s, stuff like this just isn't really reaching the river at all. On this node, I don't think, against pool. So they are therefore split between boats and hands like 1 pair. Ace queen, king queen, queen jack, king jack, ace jack. Your reasoning must therefore be that boats are killing you, so that sucks, that's no fun. And if you run into ace queen, ace jack, etc., you must be thinking that these are really overfolded. Otherwise, you'd have at least reopened for like some small kind of value here, because I don't think they've got the 9 combos of boats enough for us not to bet, unless we think that like king, queen, king, jack, ace, jack is just folding before now too frequently, which it probably is, because the queen X is actually folding flop a lot here. Had you gone for a bigger flop bet, I would be inclined to say there's almost no queen X in villain's range here. Okay, tell me how close I am to your reasoning.
Yeah, I mean, pretty there. There's a couple of factors that I also, on top of, really led to my decision. For what it's worth, I would be like pure betting ace king of hearts, pretty much a heart and a club, stuff like that. But the main factor, at least specifically for this combination, and this ace of diamonds, king of spades, and ace of spade, king of diamonds are the only 2 combos I actually would in-game check back, is purely because a lot of their calling range we are starting to block. So a lot of the flop floats would be ace queen suited, ace king suited with backdoors, or ace jack suited, ace king jack suited with backdoors once again. While we are blocking the diamonds and the spades specifically, that blocks so many of their combos, which a lot of their calling range on the river therefore leads to. We take out even just a couple of those combos, with obviously removing those. We end up in a pretty bad spot to where a lot of their range therefore leads to those full houses. Realistically, if I do jam as well, some of the time they might even be folding ace queen, which I think is a horrible fold personally, obviously against a well-equipped opponent. But even so, like queen jack maybe they might have, queen 10 suited they might have, but like so few combos I'm actually going to get value from. And I did think about betting a smaller size. And once again, I do think with my other ace kings, I would be probably mixing between a jam and like a B33 here, like a smaller size, just to get a little bit of milky value, and then calling off if they do jam. But yeah, I ended up just landing on a pure check with the ace of diamonds and the king of spades specifically, purely for those reasons of blocking the backdoors that do end up calling the river bet.
Yeah, I love that. I missed the fact that like the main queen X that is here is actually diamonds and spades, not hearts, because that's impossible now, and not clubs because that folds flop. That's a really good observation. And the fact that you found that in game is testament to, you know, why you're doing so well at poker after 2 years. I think you're really accessing the relevant data points here. Yeah, great stuff. Okay, so if you guys are watching this and you're thinking, this guy's terrible, I switched off the moment he checked back to nut straight, let me give you guys some advice. You don't deserve to play the fucking game, okay? But also, you really need to stop and think about relative hand strength. Like, I get it, guys. I know that you are sort of like having a knee-jerk reaction here. I know that this isn't natural. I know that it's surprising you that we're checking back the nut straight here. But really try and follow the logic that Hugh's given here. It's very good logic. And I just agree with you. I think in game I don't find this check back because I'm just like a feeble. I'm very feeble at having the audacity to check back these hands. I just end up like not having the balls to do it, even though I feel it's right. And I probably bet here, get jammed on, cry, or like I don't think I jam myself with this hand, but I think I bet something and then like cry and then like torture myself for weeks about the fact that it happened and I didn't just check back the river. So kudos to you. We did run into the full house of
Ooh.
potatoes. You guys will never know why we call it that. Don't even try. And yeah, you've saved a ton of money here that I think only the elite of this sort of pool are going to save. Well done. Good job. Nice.
Thank you, thank you.
All right. You and I know each other, by the way, because I stacked him like an hour ago. It was fun. Yes. I'm gonna take my win. Now that I've heard him talk about poker, I'm gonna take my win and celebrate it while I can. All right. Let's move on to another spot. All right, we have the eight of spades, seven of diamonds. Great starting hand here. We do have a pure defend, blind versus blind with this combo. We make the defend. Is this a recreational, horrible whale? Do you know anything?
Well, I actually tagged him as a very, very much reg. Especially a good little key point for is the blind versus blind size. If you go back just one little bit, see how it's 3.1, not 3. Most people, at least a lot of the regulars on the website, are usually just using a 3x blind versus blind, and then a very kind of strategy like 2 in the early positions, 2 and a bit for the cutoff, and then 2.5 for the button. So anything apart from this, I generally start to flag a little bit and just keep that in the back of my mind. So yeah, I immediately marked him as a weak player, which is why once again this is blasted into the pure call. You have to call this every single time.
3.1 is the optimal sizing, actually. Yeah, I agree. I think when someone does something that's just super weird like this, it's like, okay, no real good regs add make it 3.1 because they understand it's just totally redundant and silly. So like probably this is a weaker reg or a recreational more often than normal. And yeah, while this is close in GTO, the point is such a good one that when a recreational player opens, you just have to be in the mix way more often. Like earlier today, a recreational min opened under the gun, and I know 10-9 off is probably very close or a fold against that if it's a good player, but I'm always peeling a min open with 10-9 off against the fish. I flop trip nines. The guy fell to ace king on like 998 for absolutely no reason, and you know, if you're not in it, you can't win it. So it's a very, very good point. So
That's
flop.
it.
Mhm.
Yeah, correlation versus causation. That's all I
Right,
can say.
right.
But yeah, flop bet was not what I was expecting, and once again, this kind of solidified my kind of fishy thinking tendencies. I really don't like the B75 on this board. I generally think with a big middle, kind of want to be going small. Obviously, checking a lot of your range as well.
Yep.
A lot of people do underprotect their checking range, which is key point. Blind versus blind. But regardless, we have a pair, we have a backdoor straight, we have a backdoor flush. Obviously, never going to go anywhere. I'm pretty much just pure calling this combo. I don't ever see much merit to raising. Maybe a little bit of the time we could. If we were to raise, we're not going to go for a super big sizing, just a B50. But
Yeah.
I would only do that maybe 10% of the time with this hand.
I think it's actually horrible because if we raise here against like a recreational player, likely recreational that's sized up flop, we know their range is stronger. We know they're going to three bet wet boards with like ace, king, and aces and stuff as well. And they're just going to do that more than the average reg will do that at these stakes. So I think actually we just have a boost in implied odds here based on the player type and the sizing, and a decrease in fold equity and wanting to reopen. So I wouldn't even roll it ever. I think I'm just pure calling this spot. I agree with you that this is just a call.
Yeah.
The turn is the 10 of spades, and we face this, and this is gross, and already our hand is reaching the sort of realms of a different fog where we're just like, meh, what do we do? We can fold now, we can continue again. How do we feel about calling here versus folding?
Yeah. Well, once again, very, very, very fishy sizing, especially on
Mm,
flush completes blind versus blind. Like a lot of the time, you just want to be checking pretty much range. If not, you do want to be betting on that smaller side.
yep,
So I have kind of him marked, at least from a hand class point of view, and this is now stemming away from the whole GTO kind of line
yep,
process.
yep.
But strong hand, keep that in mind. Like I'm not going to receive much fold equity. And then this led to this decision, which was what do I do with my hand class specifically? I think it's kind of at a point where we can fold some of the time. I think it's very indifferent, and I reckon against a well-thinking, well-class player, I'd probably mix all three options with
Mm,
probably folding being the lowest and probably the one I do the absolute least amount of the time,
mm.
and then probably mixing calling and raising, probably raising half pot here. But once again, we're going back to that kind of thought process of look, weaker player, betting big generally equals good hand. Therefore, we just want to start to call a little more, realize our equity. We know that fold equity is not going to be super, super high. So I ended up electing just for a call because obviously we do have a lot of decent outs. I wouldn't say great, but they're decent.
Yeah, that's interesting. That prediction that it could be getting near the three-way mix because it has the properties of like the outs for the semi bluff raise here, although those are like concerningly unnutted. So I'd maybe query whether this hand actually does any raise. Maybe it does, but I don't know if I would find it based on that. And then like yeah, it looks. I think I might actually fold here. Like I might just differ from you in that I know it's a recreational. I know they've got a good hand. I don't know how clean my outs are. I don't think my implieds are great because they make like four flushes and four straights. And I just feel like this is a super underbluffed, like really high equity hand, just as you did. So I think I would fold the turn. But that's just sort of like my preference. I think I'm just going a bit harder on the exploit there than perhaps you were. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, I would not fault anyone for folding here. I think it's a very, very good fold if you wanted to make that decision.
Cool. So we go to the river, which is the Jack of Clubs. And we see the non. Oh, I know where this is going. We see the non all in. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. So guys, before you again start snap reacting and being like, "Oh, this is terrible. He has a pair of sevens." It's like, yes, we know we have a bad hand. That's the point, right? Because we have a bad hand, we're no longer considering calling on this card. That would be, I think, a bit insane. So what Hugh's probably considering here, I haven't seen the hand. I've no idea what's coming, but he's probably considering jamming and telling this opponent that he has a nutted hand and asking the opponent to fold the myriad of like merges, like two pairs and straights and things like that would be my guess. Although I think the straights are a bit underrepresented on this line based on the sizing of the turn and my reasoning for folding the turn if I was playing the hand. Right, Hugh, what did you do here and why?
I did end up jamming this hand. So, yeah, very good prediction. But I think, first off, from a kind of human to human thought process, it went big bet, and then big bet, but not jam. Wouldn't the kind of, from a standard point of view, if you have good hand, you want to get all the money. You want to be greedy. You want to get all of that dosh. So why wouldn't he just jam his flushes if he did play a flush like this? His straights if he somehow did have a straight, or even his sets. Like if he's going to bet this size and then call off a straight, why would he just not jam himself and then try stack two pairs? So I think a lot of his range, and I know this is very, very layman's terms, I think a lot of his range is just ace king. I like would be 90% sure that his hand is ace king. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see, or fortunately for me, sorry, I did spoil it. But yeah. So where does that leave my hand? I think Pete also did illustrate a good point of mine, for this at least node, with last node, him saying he would fold this hand specifically. My logic is cool. A lot of people are folding these hands. So where are my bluffs actually coming from? How many people are actually bluffing this node? Who's really jamming 50 extra bigs when they've already triple barreled big, big, big? Very, very hard to have bluffs. And out of all the bluffs I do have, look, I block a set of sevens. That's pretty good. I block flushes. That's pretty good. I block a straight. Also pretty good. I would play my straights like this on turn, 8-9. And a lot of my flushes as well, I would play like this as well, obviously. Where are my bluffs coming from, if not this hand? And I thought, you know what? It's probably a mix between fold and jam in theory, but I'm gonna trust my gut. I'm gonna say that if he had a really good enough hand, he would probably would jam it himself, and therefore I reckon there's gonna be enough fold equity for me to get this one through.
Yeah, and we don't really need that much. We're risking, well, we need a bit over what's that, 70 that's in there, 40 plus 30, and we're risking 85 to pick. No, we're not. We're risking villain stack 80 to pick that up. So we're needing like just over 50% fold equity to make this winning. Always good to know your thresholds, guys. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could have some other bluffs here too. Like we could have maybe like ace jack with the ace of spades or something like that. Sometimes like maybe we have like ace nine with the ace of spades. So we did call a big c bet on the flop, which is going to take away those combos somewhat. Yeah, I agree. I think like if this is a non-drooler, And even if it is a drooler, it might be all right. But if this is a non-drooler, like just a bad recreational that's not totally insane or tilted, then this probably does really well. I'd be somewhat surprised to see, like, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ace King. Like, I think you will see it. I think I just may be different in the fact that I think you'll also see King Jack, King 10, hands like that, maybe a bit more often than that. I think you'll see a lot of two pair here. But I think, like, we can be pretty optimistic about our fold equity against two pair and even sets here, and possibly even straights if this is like a lower VPIP recreational, like a tight passive. If this is like a 58-42, I'm a bit less optimistic about it. But you're right, like it's so hard to be bluffing this spot. And against the right villain, you could be approaching nearly 100% fold equity here if their range is indeed capped and your assumptions are right and they're interpreting this as they should against pool. This is like being the wolf in sheep's clothing, right? Being capable of a play that almost no one else is, and it's definitely right against the right target audience for this play. So yeah, really cool hand. All right, let's move on to hand number 3. All right, hand number 3, we have the Ace of Diamonds, King of Spades, and we're going to open it up here. We're going to get 3-bet, presumably we're going to 4-bet. I like this. I was talking with my good friend James Shea about this yesterday, where he was just pointing out that like the big blind range is more polarized for 3-betting, and the smaller 4-bet just makes a lot more sense here than it would cutoff button or some linear configuration. So I think this is a really nice sizing. 6-4-3 two-tone. We go for the small bet. Are you ranging here? Are you simplifying? Are you mixing?
I'm mixing on this board. So obviously 3-4-6 connected, very wet. Doesn't look good from, first point of view, but we do think about the action that happened pre-flop. This is a 4-bet pot. Very, very hard to have 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s. Realistically, ace-5 as well is a kind of scary card, but obviously we're still ahead of that at the moment anyway. No real point to putting a whole bunch of money in because we're only going to get called by better, fold out worse. And this gets the job done. This is the perfect, sizing for the, top.
Yeah, cool. I don't think this is a range bet board by any means. I think some people play this as a range check. I guess I do just like having betting ranges in 4-bet pots generally, though, based on how pool plays. I won't go into too much detail. But yeah, I like this. I think this is obviously fine. It's functioning as a value denial bet. And the Deuce of Diamonds comes on the turn. We are way further up in our range with Ace King here than we would be, I guess, on earlier position configurations. So the first thing that's just jumping out at me here is that we do have a lot of showdown, I think, still with this hand in this particular configuration against lesser ace-x. And what you've done here illustrates like one of the points from grade 2 lecture 5, the out of position game from Carrot Poker School, which is just about like the fact that if you do block tiny out of position, it's not so dissimilar to checking, and it's never really going to be like a big punt or anything. So we go for a block here. This gets called by worse. Do you think this ever folds out better? I would guess no, right? That people just aren't folding 7s here. What do you think?
I don't think 7s, just because you have obviously the gut shot to the
Sure.
Nutter Butters.
Sure.
But I do think there's an argument to make against like a super weak player that they could be folding out some form of pocket pair, or maybe like the ace 4 potentially, something like that. Yeah, maybe some like ace 3, ace 4, stuff like that, that just are a little bit scared. They kind of think, this is going to be super, super underbluff. Therefore, he just always has a bigger pair than mine. Might as well fold it. So I do think it can, in some cases, fold out better, but I'm not making that bet for the sake of that purpose.
Yeah.
I genuinely am doing this for a little bit of value and a little bit of protection.
Yep.
Obviously, understanding that if I am getting called by a pocket pair, I still do have a lot of equity. I have 2 overs, I have straight draws, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, and it's also just like free value against like the ace jack of clubs that's going to call and then check river. It's free value against ace queen that really doesn't have a choice now with the extra outs. We're kind of leveraging.
Even ace queens and ace jacks offsuit, they do need to be calling a decent amount of frequency, because otherwise I'm just completely steamrolling them with all of my king jacks, king tens, queen jack, all of that good stuff. So they do need to be calling worse ace x as well, which I don't want to say targeting because I kind of hate that term, but we're kind of targeting that.
Yeah, the thing is, when you're a carrot corner like disciple, or like you're a student of this brand, like you end up feeling guilty. It's like kind of Catholic guilt or something. You end up feeling guilty about certain things even if there's nothing wrong with them. So targeting, if used correctly, is obviously fine, and you're probably using it correctly, but because it's used so incorrectly everywhere, there's this big taboo now where we shouldn't say it. So that's definitely like you being oppressed subtly by me throughout the years without you even realizing. That's probably what's going on there. All right. I agree though. I think it's a really good argument, and I think the bet's totally fine for the reasons you gave. Deuce of clubs on the river. Well, now the value must have run out, right? If we're value betting the turn, the value runs out on this card with this hand.
Yeah, unfortunately, not the greatest river. Yeah, I think with Ace King, it's just a pure check back at this point. You have so much value. Obviously, like I was saying, they do have a lot of Ace Queens that, some of the time at least are going to be checking back. Ace
Yep.
Jack, which some of the time are going to be checking back, which we do win against. Um, but yeah, it's one of those spots where we're not really happy, but we're not sad. It's just kind of check and see what happens.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the way to understand this, guys, is that like you might contemplate bluffing here, but if you do, you need to remember that bluffing competes against another line, right? So when you have like 8 high on the river and you're either going to check back and lose or you're going to bluff, bluffing is competing against 0. And it's not to say that you need to bluff, but it's competing against 0 EV as the alternative, because checking back 8 high, you don't win. When you have this hand, though, check nets you like 15% of the pot or something like that. I'm just making up numbers here, but it's some amount like that, I think. And if checking nets you that money, and on GG, by the way, people will actually like almost almost always at some frequency check back hands that should bluff. Like they won't bluff with the bottom of their range, effectively, sometimes. And that nets you even more check EV. So yes, it's probably plus EV to bluff, and yes, it's probably a bit overfolded, but check is worth so much that it would need to be quite a lot overfolded before ace king becomes a bluff here, because checking is just better. So we do check. Villain goes for the bet here. Right, interesting. Let's hand read.
Yeah.
What do we think they're doing? What do we think their value range looks like? How thin is it? And what do we think are the bluff candidates that they could ignite with here?
I would love to hear your thoughts first. I just want to kind of see where your thought process is,
Okay.
just so I can kind of compare with someone else, because my brain thinks a little bit differently, and I just want to see if it's actually
Okay.
differently or if it's kind of similar.
I'm going to wing it. I've never seen the hand before. You've been thinking about it. You've probably processed it fully. You're going to have an advantage in this analysis war, but I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to shy away from it. I'm not going to fold. All right. Well, I think my first instinct is underbluffed. And the reason that's my first instinct is that Ace Queen quite notably has showdown value. Ace Jack has showdown value. Like villain can envision himself beating King 10, King Jack, King Queen, hands like this when he has those hands. To bluff here, therefore, when the club gets there, you have to have called the turn with something weaker than that, maybe. It depends on the player. Like if he's a good player, he might say, well, this is the bottom now. I have no bluffs here. I have to turn this into a bluff, otherwise I'm not bluffing enough. So against the right player, this could even get overbluffed if he just thinks it's a really overfolded spot. So my first instinct is underbluff, don't call, GG, blah, 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 netfest, stains, pigs, as he would call them. That kind of thing is jumping out at me. But then the more I think about it, I'm like, if this is a known good player who does take the lid off the can of worms, it is possible that too many of the worms crawl out the can. This is a weird analogy, it's a bit gross as well. But you can imagine that when someone does decide to bluff ace queen, that's a lot of combos. Ace queen offsuit is 12 bloody combinations in a spot where the value region is quite restricted, because like who on earth wants to shove jacks or tens here, right? Like who wants to do that? Like what kind of psychopath wants to shove tens just in case you call with ace king? I don't think it's happening. So the value region is probably ace 5, 4, 5, 6, 5 suited clubs, bolts. There aren't really any bolts because they don't 3-bet blind versus blind in the first place. Retrace your steps, guys. Always remember how you got here. Therefore, my final verdict is that I would fold here in a heartbeat against certain flags, certain reads, certain types of demographic, and if it was a more aggro battling player, I might be able to talk myself into this being overbluffed through virtue of like a lack of value combos. But I kind of hate having an ace, because I'm just wondering like how often are they actually calling king queen high on the turn, even if that's right at some frequency? Like, are they doing that? I don't know. I feel like I'd still fold, but I can, against a really good player, I could see how it could be overbluffed, maybe.
Yeah, look, I like your analysis. It's pretty similar to mine. Uh, yeah, but I will say he was a decent player. I have him marked as a pretty good thinking reg on the website.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we got to now think about bluffs. We got to think about what we're beating, what we're losing, and all of that fun stuff. So Obviously, back to the pre-flop action. No boats are really going to be ever in this line.
Mhm.
Straights, 5-6, 5-4 some of the time. I think 5-4 suited and kind of those low suited connectors, at least blind versus blind, are under 3-bet bluffed. While 5, 6, 7, 8, all of that good stuff should really be at like an 80% to 100% frequency 3-bet.
And
I
raised
really think a
on
lot of the
turn
people.
as well, right? Like they're going to be raised on the turn at high frequency when you down bet to that extent twice. Yeah, you're probably getting there. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
Very no, it's all good. No, I literally took the words out of my mouth. Like they should be raising value. Do I really think they're doing this with like sevens, eights, nines, tens, jacks, all of that kind of things? No, I really don't. I think a lot of people will find the jam on turn with those kinds of hands and kind of understand the situation for what it is, understanding that yep, if I'm running into a bigger overpair, I'm running into a bigger overpair. It's just getting stacks in. What can you do? But I am denying heaps of equity against those times that he does not have those overpairs.
Mhm.
So I think now, where is the actual value coming from? The actual value is coming from suited combos and 5x. Where are the bluffs coming from? Now, this is the fun part where you really do need hopefully have a bit of a sample size on the player you are versing. I do know I am versing a quite a creative player, so I do think there's probably going to be some bluffs that I'm not even thinking of in game. But from my immediate reaction, I think pretty much a lot of the ace jack, pure ace jack, any ace jack that rocks up in this node needs to be just pure jamming here. I think it's just too weak. You're not going to have enough showdown. And going back to the whole comments of 12 combos of ace queen off or whatever, I think pretty much every single ace queen combo needs to be bluffing at some frequency. I'd probably chalk it down to a 50-50 because obviously there is some showdown and there is a lot of bluff, denial value, all of that against the ace king combos. Um, and therefore, we now, that's a decent amount, but let's say he's not doing it full frequency. Next easiest bluff to pick is any 7x. So your A7s, King 7 suiteds, Jack 7 suited maybe is probably getting a bit too wide pre-flop for the
Mm.
calls. But they could have 8 7s, 9 7s, a lot of 7x because obviously blocking big end of the straight or whatever. And I really like the suits that I have. I am not blocking the ace of spades, which is a backdoor that would be floating the flop. Obviously, not having a club is not ideal. I think it's just one of those situations where you're not happy about it, but I'm leaning towards call. I ended up rolling about an 80-20 in game for call and fold. I wasn't too happy about it, but I also did give the villain a lot of respect in thinking that he can come up with a bluff in this situation.
Mm.
So yeah, pray to the RNG gods and hope I made the right decision.
Yeah, it's the sort of call that I think is like horrendous against certain parts of the pool and then like winning against others. I think this is such like a chalk and cheese, like opponent dependent thing. And that's a cop out normally. Like when a student says, but isn't it opponent dependent when I'm coaching? I'm like, what's your point? What's actually your point, bro? Why are you bringing that up? I get really aggressive, and like unpleasant about it. But the point is like, yes, it's opponent dependent. If we don't know the opponent, this is such a useless thing to say. But when we do, now we can actually say this is the kind of fellow that's going to turn ace queen into a bluff here. And once he does that, he's over bluffing. I actually forgot about the like 8-7 suited combos and things. I don't think they're here very often due to pre, but they can be here. Yeah, I'm liking this more and more. I'm liking this against the player type. We need to win like a quarter of the time just over. I think it's going to be all right. Yeah, I don't mind it. If you do this against the wrong player, though, you just lose 100% of the time because they're checking back ace queen and they don't understand that it's not necessarily right to check the bottom of your range back, even if the bottom of your range does have showdown value, because it's just a very topsy-turvy spot where your range is crushing the opponent. You might be getting more bang for your buck, more fold equity than required for a jam here to such an extent that like it outweighs the showdown value checking EV, and that's such an important point. So we do make the
Yeah.
call, and we do run into the aforementioned 8-7 of spades. Really well played hand by villain, and a well played hand, I think, by you, given the read. But don't try this at home, kids. Know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's no kids watching this video. It's poker content, but you get the point. All right, Hugh, that was a lot of fun. Let's finish off now with a couple of quick pointers you've made. Honestly, like some of the fastest progress I've ever seen from a poker player in 2 years. It's absolutely amazing. And I'm sure the audience would agree. I'm not surprised that you're crushing like high stakes live. I'm not surprised that you're winning in these games. What would you say to people that are trying to break through? How can they get to where they want to be more efficiently? If they can't like match your pace, how can they at least get closer to the pace at which you've improved it?
Well, I think the first is really, make sure that you love the game and not the things that come with the game. I see a lot of people come and go in and out of poker, And they're there more for the thought process of, oh, it would be amazing to have this lifestyle. It'd be really cool perception to have. But the reality is, it is a, can we swear?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. It is a fucking difficult career. It is so incredibly difficult. And I've had days where I've literally cried. And, that's being very real. It is one of the most emotionally distressing things I can do. But I love the game and I love the cards. I love everything about it. Obviously, I don't love the ups and downs of money and people losing. But make sure you actually do have that passion and really, really, nurture that passion and make sure you're not getting burnt out. I think as well, being very disciplined helps with anything in life. I think if you have that discipline and you can set yourself a routine, understand that there are going to be sacrifices to make it to the top, and you can always keep seeing that goal and setting yourself smaller goals, whether they be 3 month goals, 6 month goals, year long goals, whatever type of goals they are, making sure that they are actually measurable goals. So, for instance, a really bad example of a goal would be, I want to make $1 million this year. Like, that's great, but there's a million ways to make $1 million. Are you going to make it grinding 2 cent, 5 cent, 400 tables for 28 hours a day? Or are you going to play, a 1 million no limit game and win one big blind? Like, like, cool, you've made your $1 million. I think having a more measurable goal, being like, hey, I would prefer to make X amount of big blinds per hour or X amount of big blinds per 100, whatever kind of, system you have, and really sticking to those goals. Another thing is just talk to people. I think the biggest reason I wasn't as fast as I could have been, I genuinely think I could have progressed a little bit faster, but was because I wasn't talking to people. I was very, very, I don't want to say selfish, but in my own headspace of I don't want to share information because I'm so scared of people using that against me. But the reality is, a lot of people, there's a lot of people playing poker. And if you speak to one person, that's one person that knows. Like, cool. Pete, when I play him online, now he knows a little bit of my thought process. Doesn't mean he knows every single thing about my thought process, and doesn't mean I know absolutely everything about his thought process. And he uploads videos every single day, and I still don't know everything about it. Like, giving away a little bit of EV just so you can, get a line check through, or you can hear about their hands, or they might have an exploit based on a certain person, which can help you further your career. Also, making it a little bit of a competition where both of you are trying to progress really, really helps. At least for me, the motivation part of waking up each day, making sure you actually are studying, watching the videos, reviewing your hands, taking note, and just not sitting there and playing the game for the sake of playing the game, but actually learning for the game.
Awesome.
Also, Carrot Poker School would recommend it. That really, like, I'm not being told to say this by Pete. I swear to God, I genuinely think it is one of the greatest products out there. Super, super easy, digestible content. It's not super, super hard, like listening. It's not like super, super hard, super theory based. There is theory, obviously, but it's a very easy, digestible, safe, I guess, space and way to learn.
I appreciate all of the kind words. I think you've been a wonderful guest. It's been a lot of fun reviewing these hands. And if you guys at home would like to see Hugh back on the channel doing more analysis, talking poker, maybe even running some paid content for us in the future, say more Hugh in the comments and we'll get this guy back. Hugh, sometimes I like to be just awkward and put people on the spot like while recording a video. Because hey, why not? Do you have any interest in running like boot camps? We're thinking about doing boot camps in 2025, running seminars, a chunk of that, getting paid for it. How do you feel about teaching? Do you like teaching, or are you more like focused on the grind?
No, I love teaching. I I think I spoke to you a little bit about it before. I back in the day made a heaps of videos. I just love teaching people and I love sharing my passion and talking to other people who are passionate about the same thing. So I cannot think of honestly anything better than doing some boot camps or helping people out, whether or not. And also, if anyone wants to send some hands through Discord or whatever, more than happy to talk about it. I just love talking poker.
Cool. Drop your Discord in the YouTube comments. People can add you and chat with you. And yeah, if you do want to work with you on your game, I don't know if you do one-to-one coaching, but I guess people can inquire, see if you've got any availability, and yeah, see how it goes.
Cool.
And also, yeah, 2025, we are thinking about doing the Carrot Corner boot camp. It's going to be like a weekend packed full of really, really fun content from a bunch of different pros. And yeah, we can talk more about that at the time. It won't be until later 2025. I've got a pretty busy winter coming up with this child on the way and all of that, but we are going to look at it in 2025. All right, man, this has been awesome. Let's get you back on in the future, and thank you for bringing these fun hands.
Thank you for having me.